Good evening. It is my pleasure here tonight to be here with all of you. My name is Pino Buffoni, and I'm the Director of Education at the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and Secretary to the Board of Trustees. The Director has the privilege of chairing the annual board organizational meeting until a new chair is elected. I will now call the November 12th, 2024 board organizational meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge and begin that the meeting is taking place on the unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin homelands, and I would like to thank the Anishinaabe-Algonquin nations for hosting this meeting on their land. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Trustee Blackburn. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Trustee Dixon. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? And that motion is carried. To begin, I would like to share tonight that I'm happy that the 2023-2024 Director's Annual Report is available on the board website at www.ocdsb.ca. I would like to take this time to thank Executive Officer Mark and General Manager Pernari for all of their efforts, along with the communications team, to prepare the annual report, and encourage you to take the time to read through the Director's Annual Report produced by the communications team that reflects the efforts of so many of our district in support of student learning, well-being, and social responsibility. I'd now like to appoint election of the assistants. For the purposes of administering the election process this evening, I've appointed 2 election assistants. Our election assistants tonight will be Associate Director Brett Reynolds and Executive Officer Jesse Mark. In terms of the election of the chair of the board, our next item of business is to review some of the rules with respect to the elections process. The first is that an individual may nominate or be nominated by another member. Each nomination requires both a mover and a seconder. Upon nomination, I'll confirm the interest of the nominees for the position. Once all nominations have been made, I will ask for a motion to close nominations. After the close of nominations, the nominees will be invited in alphabetical order to speak for up to 2 minutes. After each nominee has had an opportunity to speak, I will ask the election assistants to distribute the ballots. I'll remind the members of the names of the nominees prior to voting. Each member will be given 1 ballot and will be asked to mark the ballot with an X and fold it and return it to the election assistant. For trustees not in attendance, they may text their vote directly to Sue Baker, our General Manager of Board Services. Please ensure that the message clearly states the position or committee and the name of the trustee or trustees. The election assistants will tabulate the results and return the results to me. I will then announce the results. I'd also like to remind members of the Board of Trustees that to be elected, a candidate must receive a majority of valid votes cast. If no candidate receives a clear majority, then a second ballot will be held. If no candidate receives a clear majority on the second ballot, the name of the person receiving the fewest votes shall be dropped from the ballot, and the member shall vote again on the remaining candidates. This continues until one candidate receives a majority of votes. Where it is necessary to break a tie vote, a second ballot shall be held between or amongst the candidates involved in the tie. If a vote to break a tie results in a tie again, the candidates involved shall draw cards to determine the results, using the bridge convention to determine the ranking of cards. Ace is high with card suit in the following order: spade, heart, diamond, and club. Once the chair of the board has been elected, I will relinquish the chair of the meeting to them and will invite the newly appointed chair to make a short acceptance speech of up to 2 minutes. Following that, we will take a short recess in order to acquaint the chair with their responsibilities. Any questions before I begin? Thank you. Okay, I would like to now open the floor for nominations for the office of chair. Trustee Presley?
I'd like to nominate Trustee Lynn Scott.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Motion. Trustee Lee? Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Trustee Lee. Are there any other nominations? Do I need to going once, going twice? Thank you, Trustee Presley.
I'd like to move to close nominations.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Trustee Blackburn. The nominations for the office have been closed. I would now like to invite the nominee. I'm not sure, Chair Scott, if you're permitted the 2 minutes or if it's required, but that brings to a close the nomination process. Chair Scott, help me out here. Do you get the 2 minutes as well anyway?
Well, the first thing is, nobody asked whether I would accept the nomination.
You don't care.
However,
Trustee Scott, do you accept the nomination?
however, I will accept the nomination. And I would like a minute or so just to speak after I change seats here.
Certainly. Thank you, Trustee Scott. And fortunately for all, this will come back to you very shortly. With no other, I am very pleased to announce, do we have to vote on? No, the nomination's been closed. Very pleased to announce that the new chair of the board, continuing in her role, is Chair Lynn Scott.
First of all, I would like to thank my colleagues around the table for honoring me with the opportunity to serve as chair for another year. We have a lot of work to do this year, so we are going to be very busy on some very big decisions. The other thing I would like to do at this time is also express my appreciation for the past year, for all of those board members who stepped into leadership roles, and particularly those who chaired our various committees. You've all done well, and I really appreciate the work and effort and time that you've committed to furthering the work of the board. And at this point, I will ask for about a 2-minute recess, please. I would like to call our board meeting back to order. Our next item of business is the election for the office of Vice Chair of the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. The director has already noted the rules with respect to elections and the nomination process. Does anyone need them repeated? Nominees for the position of vice chair will be given up to 2 minutes to speak prior to an election if an election is required. So I would now like to open the floor for nominations for the office of vice chair of the board. Trustee Presley,
I'd like to nominate trustee Milburn.
is there a seconder for that nomination? Trustee Blackburn, trustee Milburn, do you accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination.
Thank you. Other nominations? Trustee Dixon?
Through you, Chair, I'd like to nominate trustee Jennifer Jenkins.
Is there a seconder for the nomination? Trustee Nash, thank you. Do you accept the nomination, trustee Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair of the board? Trustee Lyra?
I'd like to move to close nominations.
And seconder for motion to close nominations, trustee Presley? Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed? And that motion is carried. So in alphabetical order, each of you has 2 minutes to speak. And that means since we do it in alphabetical order, we begin with 2 minutes for trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to my fellow trustees for this opportunity to put my name forward as a candidate for the vice chair position. I've had the privilege of getting to know each of you, learn what matters to you, and to listen to what is important to each and every one of you. I believe in the principles of good governance, thoughtful collaboration, and inclusive decision-making. Good governance is at the heart of everything we do as trustees. It ensures that our policies and actions align with the best interests of our students, staff, and families. I believe that as vice chair, I can contribute meaningfully to strengthen our governance processes by focusing on transparency, accountability, and adherence to our shared values. I will work to ensure that this board continues to serve as a pillar of trust and integrity within our community. I also believe in fostering rich, meaningful discussions. Healthy debate is the cornerstone of effective decision-making. It allows us to challenge ideas, consider diverse perspectives, and ultimately arrive at stronger, more thoughtful conclusions. As vice chair, I will encourage open dialogue while ensuring that our discussions remain respectful and solution-oriented. Most importantly, I'm committed to ensuring all voices are heard. I know how vital it is to create a space where everyone feels represented and valued. Whether it's a parent, teacher, student, or fellow trustee, I will prioritize active listening and work to amplify the voices of those who may feel unheard. I offer to bring my professional experience, my collaborative spirit, and my deep respect for public education to this role. Together, we have an opportunity to build a stronger board, one that reflects the diversity of our community and meets the needs of every student we serve. Thank you for your trust and consideration, and I ask you to consider me as vice chair for this board, and I look forward to continuing to work with all of you in service to our students, family, and schools.
Thank you. And now I invite trustee Milburn for 2 minutes.
It has been an honor to serve as vice chair over the past year, and I am pleased to have been nominated once again to serve in this role. This role is critical to building a team around the board table, help the chair set the agendas for each meeting, and help guide all trustees towards achieving the goals set out in the strategic plan. Over the past year, I've been chairing the committee of the whole meetings and worked to bring a diplomatic voice while managing the time as chair. I've gained a better understanding of the rules of committee, and I am committed to continuing to use the rules to not only manage the meeting, but if given the chance in this upcoming year to create spaces for more robust discussion. As we look into this next year, we will be faced with the outcomes of the elementary program review, as well as another difficult budget season, both of which will require our board unity and supporting our community's understanding at a more intimate level on how decisions are being made. Also, we as trustees will continue on our professional development plan to create an even greater sense of teamwork and unity around the board table. It will be my priority to continue to bring my experiences that I have gained as vice chair and as a public servant with creating transparent, equitable, accountable, and open spaces so we can discuss these critical decisions with our community and one another. As trustees, our strength lies in working together with mutual respect and open communication, and it is my intention to continue fostering that environment. It would be a privilege to continue serving as vice chair and to help you support our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Milburn. So that concludes our speeches, and I would like to call on the election assistants to distribute the ballots. I remind everyone that the following trustees have been nominated: Trustee Jennifer Jenkins, Trustee Catherine Milburn for the position of Vice Chair of the Board. Please vote for one name only. Is that?
This is the virtual.
Good. I'm very pleased to announce that the Vice Chair of the Board is Trustee Catherine Milburn. Congratulations. Next on our agenda is the election or appointment of the Chair of Committee of the Whole Budget. I would like to open the floor for nominations for Chair of Committee of the Whole Budget. Trustee Lyra.
I will self-nominate.
So is there a seconder for Trustee Lyra? Trustee Presley, thank you. Are there any other nominations for Chair of Committee of the Whole Budget? Trustee Jenkins?
I'd like to self-nominate.
And is there a seconder for trustee Jenkins? Trustee Dixon, thank you. Are there any other nominations for Chair of Committee of the Whole Budget? Trustee Kaplan-Murth?
I'd like to close nominations, please.
Motion to close nominations has been moved, seconded by trustee Forty. Thank you. I will call the question on closing nominations. All those in favor and opposed, that motion is carried. And I don't need to ask whether either candidate accepts the nomination, since both of them self-nominated, which I presume indicates that, yes, they would be interested in doing this. And that brings us to speeches. I would like to invite both candidates to speak for up to 1 minute, working in alphabetical order. We do appear to have the opportunity for speeches, but only for a minute. So we will begin with trustee Lyra, since your last name starts with E. And then we will go to trustee Jenkins.
Thank you. So I believe I have done a reasonable job as the trustee responsible for chairing the budget committee. I have kept us on task. I have kept us this conversation civil, and I would encourage everyone to support me to continue in the role as the trustee responsible for chairing the budget committee.
Thank you, trustee Lyra. Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. We have an important year coming up, and as we once again face challenging budgets, I think it's important to be well organized and ensure that staff are looked after and we clear the budget. So hopefully you'll appreciate.
Thank you, trustee Jenkins. I would like to ask the election assistants, please, to distribute the ballots. And we have a result of our election. I'm very pleased to announce that the chair of Committee of the Whole Budget is trustee Jenkins. Congratulations. Moving on then, our next items are business relate to the election or appointment of trustee members to the board's statutory committees, beginning with the audit committee. For the audit committee, we need to elect 2 trustees, 1 trustee for a 2-year term and 1 trustee for a 1-year term. Trustee Blackburn was appointed to the audit committee in 2023 for a 2-year term ending the 11th of November, 2025. So we need 2 more trustees to join her on the audit committee. I would like to open the floor for volunteers or nominations. Trustee Lee,
I'd like to nominate trustee 40.
is there a seconder for that? Trustee Lyra, thank you. Trustee Forty, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Are there any other nominations? This is for the 2-year position. Trustee Presley? Are there any other nominations for the 2-year position on audit committee? Trustee Milburn?
I would like to nominate trustee Lyra.
Is there a seconder for trustee Lyra? Trustee Nash, thank you. Trustee Lyra, do you accept the nomination?
I'm going to politely decline.
You decline. Are there any other nominations for the 2-year position on audit committee? Trustee Kaplan-Murth?
I'll self-nominate. I'll self-nominate.
Trustee Kaplan-Murth is self-nominating. Is there a seconder for trustee Kaplan-Murth? Trustee Dixon, thank you. Are there any other nominations for this position? Trustee Presley?
I'd like to move to close nominations.
And is there a seconder for the motion to close nominations? Trustee Jenkins? I will call the question. All those in favor of closing nominations and opposed, that motion is carried. And I will ask the election assistants to distribute the ballots. We have 1 person. This is for the 2-year term, and the 2 trustees who are nominated are trustee Forty and trustee Kaplan-Murth. And vote please for 1 person. And we have a result. I'm pleased to announce that trustee 40 is elected to the 2-year position on the audit committee. Congratulations. And now we get to repeat this process because we still need to appoint someone for the 1-year position. So the floor is open for nominations for the 1-year position. Trustee Blackburn
I'd like to nominate trustee Jennings.
and trustee Jennings is nominated seconder for that. Trustee Lee, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
And are there any other nominations for the 1-year position? Trustee Presley
I'd like to nominate trustee Lyra.
and trustee Lyra, and seconded by, and she's declining. Are you declining the nomination? So again, I ask, are there any other nominations for the position, the 1-year position on the audit committee? Trustee Presley?
I'd like to move to close nominations.
And is there a seconder for closing nominations? Trustee Kaplan-Murth, thank you. So with that, I will declare that trustee Jennings is acclaimed to the 1-year position on the audit committee. Congratulations, trustee Jennings. And next we have the election or appointment of a trustee member to the Parent Involvement Committee. We will first be looking for a nomination or volunteer to be the regular member of the Parent Involvement Committee. Trustee Presley.
I'd like to nominate trustee Suzanne Nash.
And is there a seconder for that? Trustee Jennings, thank you. Trustee Nash, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other nominations for the position of trustee member for the Parent Involvement Committee?
I'm just gonna close it.
Trustee Presley
I'd like to move to close nominations.
is seconded by trustee Kaplan-Murth. On the motion to close nominations, all those in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. And trustee Nash, I forgot to ask you to accept the nomination. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, I do.
I'm glad to hear that because you are acclaimed to the position of trustee member for the Parent Involvement Committee. However, we still also need an alternate trustee member for this committee in the event that the regular member is unable to attend. So do we have nominations or volunteers to serve as alternate for the Parent Involvement Committee? Alternate for the Parent Involvement Committee? Trustee Blackburn?
I'll self-nominate in the event nobody else would like to do it.
And is there a seconder for trustee Blackburn? Trustee Milburn, thank you. Are there any other volunteers or nominations for alternate member of Parent Involvement Committee? Trustee Jennings?
I move to close nominations.
Seconded by trustee Presley. I will call the question on closing nominations. All those in favor and opposed, that motion is carried. And I will declare that by acclamation, trustee Blackburn is the alternate member for the Parent Involvement Committee. Next, we have the election or appointment of trustee members to the Supervised Alternative Learning Committee. This requires, again, 1 member and 1 alternate. So do we have volunteers or nominations for the trustee member for Supervised Alternative Learning? You will recall that this committee deals with instances of students who are no longer going to be attending school to ensure that they are in a learning program. Trustee Presley?
I'd like to self-nominate.
And do we have a seconder for trustee Presley? Trustee Milburn, thank you. Are there any other nominations for the trustee member for supervised alternative learning? Trustee Jenkins,
I move to close nominations.
seconded by trustee Lee. All those in favor of closing nominations and opposed, that motion is carried. So I will declare that by acclamation, trustee Presley is the trustee member for the Supervised Alternative Learning Committee. And we also need an alternate. I'm looking for volunteers or nominations. Trustee Nash.
I will volunteer. I will self-nominate, sorry.
Trustee Nash self-nominates. Is there a seconder for trustee Nash? Trustee Kaplan-Mirth, thank you. Are there any other volunteers or nominations for the alternate member? Trustee Blackburn.
I move we close nominations.
And is there a seconder for a motion to close nominations? Trustee Dixon, thank you. All those in favor of closing nominations and opposed, that motion is carried. And so by acclamation, Trustee Nash is the alternate member of the Supervised Alternative Learning Committee. And the last one here is the election or appointment of trustees to the Director and Board Performance Appraisal Committee. We need 3 members for this committee. So the floor is open for nominations or self-nominations. Trustee Nash.
I'd like to self-nominate, please.
So is there a seconder for trustee Nash? Trustee Kaplan-Mirth, thank you. And are there other nominations? Trustee Kaplan-Mirth?
I'd like to nominate Donna Dixon.
Trustee Dixon? And is there a seconder for that? Trustee Jenkins? Trustee Dixon, do you accept the nomination? And are there other nominations? Trustee Lyra?
I'd like to self-nominate.
Sorry?
I would like to self-nominate.
Self-nominate trustee Lyra. Seconder for that, please. Trustee Blackburn, thank you. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations for the Director and Board Performance Appraisal Committee? Trustee Presley.
I move to close nomination.
And is there a seconder for that? Trustee Forty, thank you. So I'll call the question on closing nominations. All those in favor? And opposed, the motion is carried. And I would like to declare that trustees Nash, Dixon, and Lyra have all been acclaimed as members of the Director and Board Performance Appraisal Committee. At this point, we can move on to the election or appointment of trustees to ad hoc committees. And we begin with the Community Member Recognition Awards Selection Ad Hoc Committee. So the floor is open for nominations or volunteers. 3 positions on this committee. Trustee Milburn.
I would like to nominate trustee Nash.
And trustee Nash is nominated, seconded by trustee Dixon. Thank you. Do you accept the nomination, trustee Nash?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Other nominations for this? Trustee Dixon.
I'd like to self-nominate myself, Donna Dixon.
And a seconder for trustee Dixon, trustee Presley. Thank you. And another nomination, trustee Jenkins.
I'd like to self-nominate.
Well, if you're, yes, you can be self-nominating. We need a seconder for that. Trustee Forty, thank you. And are there any other nominations for this committee? Trustee Blackburn,
I'd like to close nominations.
seconded by trustee Lyra. On closing nominations, all those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. And so by acclamation, the members appointed to the Community Member Recognition Awards Selection Ad Hoc Committee are trustee Nash, trustee Dixon, and trustee Jenkins. Moving on then to the election or appointment of trustees to special purpose committees. We begin with the Policy Review Committee. There are up to 3 positions. Trustee Milburn.
I would like to nominate trustee Presley.
And is there a seconder for trustee Presley? Trustee Dixon, thank you. Trustee Presley, do you accept the nomination?
Gladly, yes.
And other nominations for this committee? Trustee Blackburn?
I'd like to nominate trustee Evans.
And seconder for that, trustee Milburn. Trustee Lyra, do you accept that? So trustee Lyra is nominated and trustee Presley is nominated. Trustee Kaplan-Murth?
I'd like to self-nominate.
And trustee Kaplan-Murth will self-nominate. Is there a seconder for trustee Kaplan-Murth? Trustee Jenkins, thank you. Trustee Lyra.
I'd like to nominate trustee Forty.
And trustee Lyra would like to, so just a second here. And we have nomination for trustee Forty, seconded by trustee Presley. Do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Are there any other nominations? Trustee Blackburn.
I move to close nominations.
Is there a seconder for that? Trustee Jenkins. I will call the question on the motion to close nominations. All those in favor and opposed, that motion is carried. So we have 4 trustees who have been nominated for 3 positions. The ballots are being distributed. I will ask people to vote for up to 3 names on the list. And I remind you again that the trustees who have been nominated are trustee Presley, trustee Lyra, trustee Kaplan-Murth, and trustee Forty. And we have a result for the election of trustees to the Policy Review Committee. And I would like to declare that Trustee Lyra, Trustee Forty, and Trustee Presley have been elected to the Policy Review Committee. And I would like to congratulate all of them and thank all of those who were willing to put their names forward for this committee. Moving on then, next up, we have the election or appointment of trustees to the Advocacy Strategy Committee. Floor is open for nominations, self-nominations. Trustee Blackburn.
Like to nominate trustee 40.
And seconded by Trustee Milburn. Thank you. Trustee Forty, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Are there other nominations for this committee? Up to 4 positions. Trustee Milburn.
I would like to nominate trustee Presley.
Trustee Presley, seconded by Trustee Lyra. Trustee Presley, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Other nominations for advocacy strategy? Trustee Lyra.
I will self-nominate.
Trustee Lyra self-nominates, seconded by Trustee Forty. Any other nominations for this? Trustee Lyra?
I would like to nominate trustee Kaplan-Murph.
Sorry, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy.
Trustee Kaplan-Murph.
And seconded by Trustee Nash. Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
I beg your pardon, yes? Any other nominations for this committee? Did I see your hand, Trustee Lee, or not? Trustee Jennings.
I move to close nominations.
And a seconder for closing nominations, Trustee Dixon. And since we have 4 positions and we have 4 people nominated, I will declare that by acclamation, Trustees Evans, Trustee Lyra, I should say, Trustee Forty, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, and Trustee Presley are members of the Advocacy Strategy Committee.
Sorry, Chair, just to interrupt, I don't think you called the question on closing nominations, just
I'm
for
sorry.
a formality, but
Let us go back and call the question on closing nominations. Did we have a mover for that? Yes, we did. We did have a mover and a seconder. So all those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed? And so congratulations again to trustees Lyra, Forty, Kaplan-Murphy, and Presley. And moving on to the next one, election or appointment of trustees to the Board of Directors for the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority. First of all, we do have Trustee Lyra continuing for the 2nd year of her 2-year term until the 11th of November, 2025. So we are opening the floor for nominations for 1 member for a 2-year term. Trustee Jennings.
I'd like to nominate Trustee Lee.
And seconded by Trustee Presley. Trustee Lee, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
And are there any other nominations for this position on Austin? Trustee Blackburn?
I'd like to close nominations.
Motion to close nominations, seconded by Trustee Nash. All those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed? And that means that the motion is carried. That means that Trustee Lee, you are acclaimed to a 2-year position on the Board of Directors of the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority. Moving on then to the election of alternate members, 2 alternate members for a 1-year term. Are there nominations or self-nominations? I will note for those who haven't done this before that it is relatively rare for us to need the alternate members, but it does occasionally happen. So it's good to have a number of people who might be able to be available. Trustee Nash?
I will self-nominate.
And the seconder for trustee Nash, trustee Jennings. Do we have any other nominations to serve as alternates? Trustee Lyra?
I would like to nominate trustee Jennings.
Trustee Jennings, would you serve as an alternate?
Thank you, yes.
And seconded by trustee Presley. Are there any other nominations to serve as alternates? Trustee Blackburn?
Like to close nominations?
And we have a motion to close nominations, seconded by trustee Lyra. All those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed? And that motion is carried. And so I will declare that by acclamation, trustees Jennings and Nash are appointed as 2 trustee alternate members for the Board of Directors for OSTA for the coming year. And now we are at 11.4 on our agenda, appointment of trustees to the Ottawa-Carleton Education Network. This requires 2 trustees. I'm looking for nominations or self-nominations. Trustee Presley.
I'd like to nominate trustee Nash.
And is there a seconder for trustee Nash? Trustee Jennings. Trustee Nash, do you accept the position?
Yes, thank you.
And are there other nominations for a trustee member for the Board of Directors for OCNet? Trustee Blackburn?
I'll self-nominate.
And do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Milburn? Are there any other nominations for the 2 trustees' positions for OCNet's board? Trustee Lyra?
I'll move to close nominations.
And a seconder for closing nominations? Trustee Jennings, thank you. So all those in favor of closing nominations and opposed, that motion is carried. And I will declare that trustees Nash and Blackburn will serve as trustee members of the Board of Directors of the Ottawa-Carleton Education Network, or OCNet. And now we are at item 12, election or appointment of trustees for agenda planning. We need 1 trustee member and 1 alternate. So first for the trustee member, trustee Nash.
I'd like to self-nominate, please.
And is there a seconder for trustee Nash? Trustee Lee, thank you. Are there other nominations? Trustee Presley.
I'd like to nominate trustee Lyra.
And is there a seconder for trustee Lyra? Trustee Milburn? Trustee Lyra, do you accept the nomination? And are there any other nominations for agenda planning? Trustee Blackburn?
Like to close nominations?
And seconder for closing, motion to close nominations, trustee Dixon, thank you. So that means we do have an election here. We have 2 trustees.
Sorry, Chair. Point of order. We need to call the question again on the motion to close nominations.
Here, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So all those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed, that is carried. So we have 2 trustees who have been nominated for agenda planning, trustee Lyra and trustee Nash. And I will ask the election assistants, please, to distribute the ballots. And we have a result, and that is that trustee Nash will be the trustee supporting agenda planning for a one-year term. And now we need to find an alternate in the event that trustee Nash is unable to join us. So are there nominations for alternate? Trustee Blackburn.
I'd like to nominate trustee Lara.
And is there a seconder for that nomination? Trustee Forty. Are there any other nominations? Oh, trustee Lara, do you accept as alternate?
I do not. I'm not going to rearrange my schedule every week if I'm not expected most weeks. Thank you, though.
Thank you. So trustee trustee Lyra has declined the nomination. And therefore we need some other nominations. Trustee Jennings.
I'd like to self-nominate.
And trustee Jennings self-nominated, seconded by trustee Forty. Are there any other nominations for alternate? Trustee Presley,
I'd like to move to close nominations.
seconded by trustee Kaplan-Murth. All those in favor of closing nominations and opposed? And that motion is carried. And so I will declare that trustee Jennings will be the alternate trustee for agenda planning. And we now are at item 13, election or appointment of a trustee mentor for the student trustees. This is one trustee. Are there nominations or self-nominations? Student trustee mentor, trustee Milburn,
I would like to nominate trustee Presley.
and seconded by trustee Forty. Do you accept the nomination, trustee Presley?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for the position of student trustee mentor? Trustee Jennings?
I'd like to nominate trustee Blackburn.
And is there a seconder for trustee Blackburn? Trustee Presley, trustee Blackburn, do you accept the nomination?
I respectfully decline, Madam Chair.
And so any other nominations? Trustee Lyra.
I'll self-nominate.
And trustee Lyra will self-nominate. Is there a seconder for trustee Lyra? Trustee Presley, thank you. Further nominations for student trustee mentor? Trustee Lee?
I'll move to close nominations, please.
And is there a seconder for a motion to close nominations? Trustee Nash, thank you. I will call the question, closing nominations. All those in favor and opposed, that motion is carried. And once again, I will ask our election assistants to distribute the ballots. We have two names on the ballot, trustee Lyra and trustee Presley. And trustees should vote for one name. And we have a result, and I'm pleased to announce that the trustee mentor for student trustees is Trustee Presley. Congratulations. And now we move on to selecting non-voting volunteer members for the board's advisory committees, beginning with student senate, where we are looking for 2 trustees, 1 member and 1 alternate. So do we have any volunteers as member or as alternate for student senate?
I'll self-nominate, sir.
Trustee Nash will self-nominate. Trustee Presley, or sorry, Trustee Lyra,
I was going to nominate Trustee Nash. I will second Trustee Nash.
you will second that. Trustee Jenkins? Do we have any other volunteers or nominations for student senate regular member? If we do not have any, trustee,
Oh, if we don't have any, then do I need to move to close nominations or?
I think we might as well do
Sure.
it just in case,
Well, then I move to close nominations.
just in case. So motion to close nominations, trustee Lee will second that. All those in favor of closing nominations? And trustee Nash, you will be the student senate trustee member for the coming year. Do we have any volunteers to serve as alternate? Trustee Lyra,
I'd like to nominate Trustee Presley.
sorry,
I'd like to nominate Trustee Presley.
trustee Presley to serve as alternate.
I accept.
And trustee Presley accepts that. Do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Jenkins? So any other volunteers for the position of alternate for student senate? And I'm not seeing any, so I think we're looking for a motion to close nominations. Trustee Jenkins?
I'll move to close the nominations.
And that is seconded by Trustee Forty. All those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed? That motion is carried. And so we have Trustee Presley as the alternate for Student Senate. Moving on then to the Alternative Schools Advisory Committee. Volunteers or nominations for this one? Trustee Milburn?
I'd like to nominate Trustee Presley.
And is there a seconder for that nomination? Trustee Dixon? Trustee Presley, do you accept the nomination?
With much gratitude, yes.
And are there any other nominations for the trustee for ASAC? Trustee Lyra?
I'll move to close nominations.
We have a motion to close nominations. All those in favor, or seconded by? Trustee Nash, all those in favor of closing nominations? And opposed, that motion is carried. So congratulations, Trustee Presley. You are confirmed as the member of the Alternative Schools Advisory Committee. And that brings us to the Advisory Committee on Equity, also known as ACE. Volunteers or nominations for the trustee member on the Advisory Committee on Equity, up to 2 trustees for a 1-year term. Trustee Presley.
I'd like to nominate Trustee Blackburn.
And seconder for Trustee Blackburn, Trustee Forty. Do you accept the nomination, Trustee Blackburn?
I do, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other nominations or volunteers for the ACE Committee? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
I would like to nominate Trustee Dixon.
And a seconder for Trustee Dixon, Trustee Nash. Thank you. Trustee Dixon, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
You do? Yes. Other volunteers for the ACE Committee? Trustee Presley? Are there any other nominations or volunteers to serve on ACE? Trustee Kaplan-Murth?
I'll self-nominate.
And And trustee Kaplan-Mirth self-nominates. Seconder for trustee Kaplan-Mirth. Trustee Jenkins, thank you. And are there any other nominations or volunteers for this committee? If not, we could use a motion to close nominations. Trustee Presley,
Motion to
seconded
close
by,
nominations. Yeah.
seconded by trustee Lee. And I will call the question on the motion to close nominations. All those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. And since we have three people who have put their names forward, we will have an election. And I would also add that since the policy on this is under review, it is possible, although not yet decided, that there will be some changes to the trustee membership, but we will sort that out when we see what the policy ultimately includes with regard to trustee members for ACE.
Madam Chair, for clarification, are we voting for 2 members?
Yes, you are voting for 2 members, and the names in contention are trustee Blackburn, trustee Dixon, and trustee Kaplan-Mirth. And we have a result, and that is that trustees Blackburn and Dixon are confirmed as members of the Advisory Committee on Equity. And that brings us to item 14.4, Indigenous Education Council. For this, we are seeking 1 trustee if we go by the policy. The names, however, will be submitted to the committee. Trustee Dixon?
Through you, Chair, I'd like to self-nominate myself.
And a seconder for that, trustee Presley will second that. Other nominations for Indigenous Education Council, trustee Presley?
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Justine Bell.
And is there a seconder for trustee Bell? Trustee Milburn? Trustee Bell, do you accept the nomination?
I do, thank you.
And other nominations for the Indigenous Advisory Council? Trustee Milburn?
I would like to nominate trustee Scott.
Sorry?
I would like to nominate trustee Scott. Yourself?
I think I actually get to sit there as chair, as a ex officio as chair of the board. So that would not be necessary, but I appreciate the nomination. Any other nominations for Indigenous Education Council? Trustee Dixon,
Can I move to close it? Close the nomination?
your motion,
My motion to close?
moving to close nominations. Oh, Trustee Forty?
I just see that trustee Bell's hand is up.
Trustee Bell, your hand is up.
I'm not sure if this is a point of order, Chair. It has to do with, I believe, in accordance with the Algonquin protocols that have been agreed upon. The names will be, in fact, put forward to the Indigenous Education Council, and that I don't know if there's necessarily a vote needed, given the specifics of the protocol. For your clarification, thanks.
And yes, I already noted that the names would be submitted to the Indigenous Education Council for the final decision. So we have a motion to close nominations from Trustee Dixon, seconder for that, Trustee Forte. I will call the question on closing nominations. All those in favor and opposed, the motion is carried. And so the two names that will be submitted will be Trustee Dixon, or yes, Trustee Dixon and Trustee Bell.
Chair, can I interject on the point of order?
Yes, you may.
I think the right procedure would be to vote on these names and then submit a name under our policy. I'm not sure, I understand that there's an Algonquin protocol, but I think the right procedure would be to vote on these names, submit a name to the council for their consideration, but I'll leave it to you to determine the right process there. I'm just going based on what the policy says, not necessarily based on what has been practiced.
Thank you, Executive Officer Mark. It is correct that the policy does state that there will be one trustee. However, in accordance with the Algonquin protocol, there is a strong desire and expectation that the Indigenous Education Council will have some say in who is accepted into the circle of the committee. And for that reason, I think it is important until we review that policy to do our best in the interest of truth and reconciliation to comply with the Algonquin protocol that the committee has adopted. So with that, I think that we will simply send the names forward rather than having an election here. And it will be then up to the Indigenous Education Council to decide on whether there will be one trustee or two trustees. And if one trustee, which trustee, or one trustee and an alternate. But I think it is important for the Indigenous Education Council to have some license to make the decision on this. So with that, we will put forward the names of Trustee Dixon and Trustee Bell to the Indigenous Education Council for their approval. And that will be confirmed at, I expect, at their next Indigenous Education Council meeting, which is going to be held on the 21st of November. And that brings us to the end of the agenda almost. We do, however, need a motion to destroy the ballots. Trustee Lee, seconded by Trustee Dixon. All those in favor of the motion to destroy the ballots and opposed, that motion is carried. And with our business for this evening now complete, I would like to congratulate all those who have been appointed to our various committees. And I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.